not only have you been a fantastic lawyer over the last 40 years representing the needs of people who have been victimized by bad doctors, but I know you've been a big advocate for trying to change the laws in the state of Louisiana to do away with the caps, for example.
That's correct.
I mean, the first step would be to do away with the cap on economic damages, because that's not addressed at all. And in case anybody doesn't realize it, the guy that's making $75,000 a year has a certain standard of living, and now they can't pay for their house. Now they lose their car, they lose their house, they're living in poverty, all because they can't get any money as a result of a doctor who wronged them, harmed them irreparably. How do you change 42 years later? How are we going to change these laws to reflect the ideal outcome for victims of medical malpractice in the state of Louisiana?
It will come when people finally recognize the injustice of where we are. Mm-hmm. Now, the first step that I have repeatedly proposed is, at the very least, shouldn't we have a cost of living index where the cap that was established 42 years ago has at least remained in conformity with the cost of living? Mm-hmm. It hasn't. Mm-hmm. So our cap today is worth, in $1975, about $140,000.
Okay.
So that's all it's worth. So
we by the way, I think before our interview, we talked a little bit in California in 1975. We have a cap of $250,000 for pain and suffering, non-economic damages, and on the ballot last November, there was an issue that people could have voted on to increase that to the standard of living to, I think, $1.25 million, $250 to $1.25, which would probably be similar here.
Right.
But it was defeated by the voters because they believe that greedy trial lawyers are filing frivolous lawsuits. I mean, this is ridiculous. You know,
the real problem, and we have to give credit where credit is due. The insurance industry and the American Medical Association and the pharmaceutical companies have done a wonderfully effective job of basically brainwashing the American public into believing that our system is fair and just.
Yeah, but that's why I asked this question. 42 years later, when are they going to wake up?
I don't think at this point I can share with you that this year in the legislature there was a bill to increase the cap. The author had to pull it because he had so little support for it. I have served on 2 or 3 committees appointed by the governor of the legislature over the years, and there is a tremendous resistance within the medical community and the insurance industry to any modifications in the existing law that would increase the cap, or even certainly any effort to separate or to remove economic losses from the cap.
Right.
I've shared with my own colleagues that at the present time in this state, I do not believe that modifications statutorily to the Act to address these issues are likely to occur anytime in the foreseeable future. The result is the most vulnerable people in our society, those whose lives have been inexorably changed, who are dealing with heartbreak, disfigurement, horrible quality of life, enormous bills, enormous financial loss, remain grossly undercompensated. And at a point, what the general public does not fully understand is that when that occurs, there comes a point in time when those people go on, and they have no choice but to go on the welfare rolls. So what happens is that the public, the taxpayers, end up paying for the harm caused by negligent healthcare providers.
Right.
And that's not right.
Right. And the insurance company's refusal to absorb the responsibility for the doctors that they insure.
Absolutely. And that issue alone is a real travesty, because we should have a situation where each of us is accountable for the harm we do to our fellow man.
Yes.
If I use this with the jury oftentimes. If I'm driving home and I'm inadvertent and I'm not paying attention and I run a stop sign and I hit a child on a bicycle and break his leg, I ought to be accountable for the harm that child has suffered.
Yes.
If a healthcare provider, a doctor or hospital, runs a medical stop sign and harms somebody, they should be equally accountable for that harm.
Yes.
And that they should not, by virtue of an archaic law, be able to shift the burden of their own mistake, their own negligence, their own carelessness, their own incompetence to the taxpayers of this state.
Yes.
And that's what's happening, unfortunately.
I agree with you 100%. And I want to thank you so much for spending time with us, because this is a message that we want to get out as much as you.